Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and it's Monday. That means we're back for another Warhammer The Old World Almanac article on Warhammer Community. So today it's mustering the Grand Army of Bretonnia. In reality, it's how we build our armies going forward. So without further ado, let's take a look and see what the article says. So first up then we have Warhammer The Old World galloping into position on its finest barded Bretonnian warhorses. So we know how to plan, move, shoot, fight, run away and cast magic and soup it all up with special rules. But without an army, general points or a plan, we're just a bunch of skeletons milling around in a field. Okay, right, building your army. As they always have been in real life, armies in Warhammer The Old World are selected according to a system of points. Games do not have recommended points values. As long as you've got a general and 3 units, you have an army. However, 2,000 points per side will make for a substantial 2 to 3 hour game, perhaps involving 100 or more models each. I would suggest that that's not too dissimilar to an 8th edition style game. 2,000 points certainly was pretty much what I was playing. The length of time I think playing a game can vary depending on the armies you use, and also if the people playing are using movement trays, which I strongly recommend, as that substantially speeds up the game and also makes it easier to do things like movement, wheeling, and so on with the units. So, okay, nothing groundbreaking there. Right, understanding army composition lists. So, it's broken down into characters, core units, which are the iconic troops who make up the bulk of every warband, special, skilled and veteran troops, capable of anchoring a battle line of lesser warriors or performing great deeds, and then rare, the most unusual models in your army, mighty monsters, weird war machines, and elite soldiers of unsurpassed skill. On top of that, there are also mercenaries. Some armies can include specific units drawn from other lists as mercenaries. Okay. And then allies. Most armies can include an allied contingent drawn from another army list. Right. So, every faction will have a grand army upon release, a balanced list of options from which you can pick a wide variety of units chosen from 4 categories shown above. There's usually 1 page of stipulations, but the full range of units from each faction is available for selection. Take, for example, the Grand Army of Bretonnia. So here it looks like we're going to find out every single unit that's now in the Bretonnian army book. That's going to be very interesting indeed. It also suggests here you will have a grand army upon release. That sounds like there may be different sort of army list compositions going forward. So this is kind of like the generic one that everyone is going to have. So looking at the Kingdom of Bretonnia army list. So characters, up to 50% of your army's points value may be spent on characters. So in a 2,000 point game, that's 1,000 points, which is quite a lot. So it looks like you're limited to be only able to take 1 duke, and then you can take 1 baron or prophetess per 1,000 points. So these would typically have been your lords. Their points cost probably makes it a bit prohibitive to take too many of those anyway. So I don't see that being too bad, having those restrictions on it. And I think I do quite like the fact that it kind of makes for a bit more of a balanced army, but it does allow for taking as many paladins, damsels, and sergeants at arms. Now that's a new one. So paladins and damsels before sergeants at arms appears to be some type of new character. That's an interesting one. Maybe that's something to do with leading Knights of the Realm. Those sergeants at arms would suggest more something like a character to lead peasantry. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. Core, so there is a core tax, which is 25% of your army's points value. So that's at least 500 points must be spent on core. You must take 1 unit of Knights of the Realm on foot or mounted Knights of the Realm. So you must take a unit of Knights of the Realm, and you must take 1 unit of either men-at-arms, or peasant bowmen. So that's a minimum. So you have to have one of each of those, but you can have obviously more. And then you can have 1 unit of knights errant per unit of knights of the realm on foot or mounted knights of the realm. So knights errant there limited to, if you take a knights of the realm, you can take 1 unit of knights errant. Take 2 knights of the realm, you can take 2 units of knights errant. Okay, fairly clear there. And nothing too surprising, and looking across these look to be very much the same as 8th edition in terms of the points allowances. So, in the special category there, we've got 50% of your army's points may be spent on squires, questing knights, Pegasus knights confirmed in special, and mounted yeomen. And then you can take up to 2 units of battle pilgrims per 1,000 points. Interesting there, I don't see any mention of the Grail Reliquae, so maybe that unit is not going to be in the book, or maybe it's included somehow with the Battle Pilgrims as an add-on. I don't know, but I don't see it listed separately, which it was in the original book. So no new units there, but 1 unit that appears that it might be missing. Right, so looking into rare, maximum of 25% of your army's points value, so that's maximum of 500 points can be spent on rare, and that's your Grail Knights and your Field Trebuchet, pretty much the same as before, and you are capped at 1 Field Trebuchet per 1,000 points. So in your 2,000 point game, you would be allowed a maximum of 2 Field Trebuchets. Nothing too terrible about that, to be honest. Personally, I love Grail Knights, and I'd always take a Grail Knight. I even cosplay a Grail Knight, so I'm always going to have at least 1 unit of Grail Knights, so I probably wouldn't be able to have more than 1 Field Trebuchet anyway. So, you can spend 20% of your army's points value on mercenaries, and you can spend up to 25% of your army's points value on an allied contingent. And that's any Kingdom of Bretonnia Army of Infamy composition list. So that's going to be these other Bretonnia army lists, which is interesting. And one of the following Grand Army composition lists. So Dwarven Mountain Holds, Empire of Man, High Elf Realms, Wood Elf Realms, but Dwarves and Wood Elves have suspicious. There's probably some issue there. Thing with always subbing in outside an army book or bringing in units from other army books into a list can cause balance issues, so I hope there's nothing too cheesy in this. But looking at the points values, it doesn't look like it could be that game breaking. But again, as always, taking these in isolation, and we need to see the rules in completion to decide if that could be a problem. Right, so what do they say? So there's a lot here to unpack. Firstly, you can't overload your army with powerful wizards and mighty heroes. Prophetesses and barons are a rare occurrence, even in armies of the king. There you go. There is, however, the flexibility to take characters of lower ranks. Paladins, damsels and sergeants at arms enjoy no such limits, and you'll certainly want at least 1 paladin for the free Battle Standard Bearer upgrade. So that's interesting. Battle Standard Bearer upgrade does come for free. That's pretty good. What else have we got? So otherwise, as long as 25% of your roster, 500 points in a 2,000 point game, is spent on units listed as core and includes 1 unit of Knights of the Realm and another of Peasant Levies, army selection is very flexible. As you'd expect, Grail Knights and Field Trebuchets aren't a common sight, but at 38 points a model, plus 7 points per champion, musician and standard, you can just about cram 2 units of 6 Grail Knights in a 2,000 point army, perfect for any duke who prefers to keep every single one of his eggs right there in a decorative basket. In my mind, I'm already thinking I want 1 Field Trebuchet, and then I'll make up the rest of the points with Grail Knights. See how that turns out. Not saying that's going to be the best thing to do, but that's kind of kind of how I want as many Grail Knights, but I like my Field Trebuchet in there as well. Right, talking of Dukes, so we get another unit card. So, Lords of Bretonnia, we got Dukes, Barons and Paladins on here. Obviously no points costs for them individually. What we can see here is Baron and Paladin both have weapon skill 6. So the only difference between the Baron and Paladin is a wound, an initiative, an attack, and a leadership. Okay, so the leadership goes down to 8 with the Paladins. The Duke there, most expensive, he gets that extra weapon skill, the extra strength. Now that could be key. Same initiative as a Baron, but extra wound and an extra attack. It'll be interesting to see the difference in points cost between a Duke and a Baron. But the Duke there definitely looking like he's got the edge. That weapon skill, the strength, the attack, all, and the extra wound, they're all quite a big deal. That would suggest there's probably a significant point difference between the two. Confirmation there that the base size, if that person is on foot at least, is on a 25 by 25 mil base, and their base equipment's hand weapon and heavy armor. Now they can take a Morning Star, so Morning Stars are back in. Remains to be seen if they have special rules for Morning Stars in particular. Great weapon, well that was +2 strength and strikes last. Lance, we've seen before, that's +2 strength and a charge. Shield adds to your save. They can be mounted, but it doesn't say what the mounts can be. And then they can choose to replace the Knight's Vow with the Questing Vow or Grail Vow. Pretty standard. May take a single knightly virtue, so it's not a number of points of knightly virtues. You can take a single knightly virtue, so that's a slight difference. And then obviously a difference in how many points you can spend on magic items, with 100 points for the Duke, 75 points for a Baron and 50 points for a Paladin. Again, pretty standard stuff from previous editions. Special rules. The Duke there gets Blessings of the Lady, Rallying Cry and the Grail Vow. I think we've seen some of that already. We know what Blessings of the Lady does, at least that's to pray before battle, and you give up the first turn, but you gain additional ward save. Baron and Paladin there, Blessings of the Lady, Rallying Cry and the Knight's Vow. Okay, so the other thing with the Duke there, he comes with the Grail Vow. Whereas the Baron and Paladin would have to pay for it. So again, I'm thinking that the Duke is going to be quite a significant difference in points cost. Okay, Grognards may remember multiple ranks of heroes from previous editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and those delineations are still present and correct. A Duke is a mighty warrior indeed, no time for feasting, issuing edicts, or sprawling decorously across your throne for these guys. Every Bretonnian general is tremendously skilled at arms and as strong as a troll. Okay, are you telling me the trolls are strength 5? Maybe you are. Right, okay, another classic piece of artwork, with a troll's head no less. But what have we got? So options abound. You'll note a choice of weaponry. That's pretty standard from previous. Again, no great surprises. These are taken from a larger menu of arms in the main rulebook. Okay. A Morning Star, also Morning Star specifically listed there, +1 strength, -1 AP in the first round of combat. Okay, first round only. Great weapon, doubles the bonuses. So a great weapon gives you +2 strength and -2 AP. +2 strength, -2 AP. But you strike last, which is always the downside. And then the Lance we've seen before, which is +2 strength on the charge and the AP. And then the shield improves armor save by 1 we've seen before. Okay, we'll gloss over the knightly virtues for now, but suffice to say there are 2 pages of them and they're great. And wouldn't you like to know about mounts? Well, we would. We've seen some mounts, but here we go. The Hippogriff is back. So if you do have your old Lewin Leon Gur model, then you can potentially use him as a Duke riding a Hippogriff. Right. So Hippogriff then, movement of 7, weapon skill 5. He adds. So this is where you get this joint profile now that you didn't quite have before. So he gives +1 toughness to that Duke, and he's going to add 3 wounds to the Duke. So you're not going to have this shooting at rider or monster anymore. You're going to be shooting at the unit with combined stats, but for the purpose of attacks, the mount has his own attacks, but you're always going to resolve hits and wounds and armor saves against the unit combined, if that makes sense. Base size 50 by 50. Is that the size of the old Lewin base? I think it might be, if I remember correctly. Equipment, he has Wicked Claws, so rated more on a Griffonic Pelt, which counts as heavy armor. Okay. And he may have Barding for plus 15 points. Okay, so you're looking at essentially, from what we saw before, 3+ armor save, because you don't get the +1 for cavalry. So that's your heavy armor, 5+, shield 4+, barding 3+. So a 3+ armor save. Right, he gets close order, so that's in normal rank and file. Counter charge we've seen before. Fly 9. So that's interesting. Can he only fly 9? Is it flight plus his move? Because flying 9 inches, so fly basically gives him 2 inches more than his current move. So I don't know, fly with 9 in brackets, not sure. Don't know if we've had that confirmed. Correct me if I'm wrong. But is the fly added to the movement, or does he only get fly 9, i.e. giving him 2 inches more than his normal move? Large target, which means normally you can't use cover. Stomp attacks D3. Swift stride we saw before, and terror we've seen before as well. Okay, right. So, and if you want to see those Swift stride terror, you have to check out the previous video which looked at those universal special rules. Right. Yes, your duke or one very fancy baron is entitled to ride a hippogriff. So dukes or barons can have a hippogriff. Interesting. Captured as a chick and trained from birth as one of the fiercest mounts in the old world. Fast, strong and lethal in combat, and they fight independently of their rider but combine profiles. So that's what we saw there, making a single model that's much tougher and can dole out a lot of attacks. I quite like that, actually. You know, having recently been doing faction-focused videos, looking at 8th edition rulebooks and stuff, I actually quite like this combined profile. I think it's an elegant solution while keeping the individual attacks. See how it plays. At the other end of the martial scale are the men-at-arms. What they lack in combat prowess, they also lack in bravery, equipment, and chivalric acumen. On the other hand, they're cheap. We don't know how cheap. So here we go. Those are the original men-at-arms models. We know there's no new ones. The interesting thing here is this one. Right, so men-at-arms, weapon skill 2. Okay, so you're down at skeleton levels of weapon skill. I think they were 3 before. Maybe I'm misremembering, but weapon skill 2. Strength and toughness 3, standard human profile. Initiative 3, attacks 1, leadership 5. You can have a yeoman and a grail monk. Now this grail monk, that's new. So regular infantry, so as expected, regular infantry, 25 by 25 mil bases. Unit size 10 plus, and they come with hand weapons, pole arms, light armor and shields. So they're on a 5+ armor save. Okay. We don't know how much they cost though, but what have we got here? So, the yeoman is the champion, that's plus 7 points per unit. You can have a grail monk, which is new, plus 7 points per unit. That'll be interesting because, of course, I don't know if that's going to be a separately sold character. Because certainly, well, I mean, for those people like myself that already have, 60 plus men at arms, I certainly don't have any grail monks. We've got one model as a standard bearer and one model as a musician. Okay, and then the Grail Monk may be equipped with a Blessed Triptych at plus 25 points. That's a lot of points for something. It must be pretty good. Close Order, Horde, don't know what that does. Levies, that's new. Peasantry. Peasantry in the past was based upon that they would flee and not cause knightly units to panic. but they gained bonuses if they were close to knightly units. Okay, shield wall is interesting, and warband, don't know what that is either. Right. Okay, what does it say? The Grail Monk functions as a kind of second champion whose blessed triptych will inevitably prove very useful. It grants the whole unit stubborn. So the first time they're required to take a break test, they don't need to risk a dice roll. Instead, they fall back in good order. Okay, combined with Shield Wall, which allows them to give ground instead of falling back, they're capable of stealing the impetus from even the heaviest cavalry. Interesting how strong that actually could be. Interesting. So, I mean, yeah. Is that going to mean again that we're back to large blocks of infantry with cavalry struggling to remove them? That's going to be an interesting one. I mean, they're not going to do much damage back to the heavy cavalry, I would suggest. But, so far, that is going to be an interesting one. Grail Knights are a 1 wound unit. So, if you... Even a few hits back can be removing them from the battlefield. So, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. It feels quite strong in being able to block them. Like, I kind of would expect a decent size unit of Grail Knights to absolutely wreck a unit of infantry, for example. But it says here that the first time they're required to take a break test, they don't. They just fall back in good order. And then with the shield wall, they just give ground. Okay, interesting. Have to see how it plays. As again, it's in isolation. We've seen a Grail Knight profile, though. We've seen how many attacks they've got. We've seen how many wounds they've got. Maybe this is just a lingering worry from the 8th edition, where when I played and in my local area and local meta, it was all about big blocks of the toughest infantry you could put on the table, and cavalry of most types, with the exception of some niche-specific skirmishing cavalry, were you could play them, but they weren't optimal, and they struggled to deal with these big blocks of infantry, and usually couldn't survive a couple of rounds of combat following. So we'll see how that goes. Though, of course, with the giving ground now and the cavalry getting chance to pursue, they'll be back on the charge, which can also help, particularly if you've got lancers, getting that +2 strength back. We'll see. We'll see how it goes, ladies and gentlemen. Like I say, it's in isolation, but that seems quite nice, at least. Right, Armies of Infamy. Let's move on. The Grand Army is not the only way to select a force, however. Each faction will gradually gain access to Armies of Infamy, which provide often and wildly different ways to muster a force. As a Bretonnian lord, you might wish to enter exile, which means you can then take Forbidden Border Prince's bombards into battle. Okay, so black powder weapon, Border Prince bombard, interesting. While those who really just enjoy knights and more knights may prefer an errantry crusade. Okay, like a full cavalry army. Interesting. Okay, so I guess this feels to me a little bit like what they've done recently with Warhammer 40k, for example, where, you've got your different sort of unit rosters, if you like, or not unit rosters, but, formations within an army book to allow you to play a certain way. Now, that tends to be more rules-based. This one is actually about army composition, but it's to give you the flavour of a different type of formation, which is quite nice, and I like that. As long as you can balance it out. The danger, again, with all these is that you end up with one particular type of list that becomes clearly the better list, and therefore that's all you ever see. So we'll see how it plays out. I like to see lots of different versions of the same faction on the tabletop. which means it's a pretty balanced book and everything's got a role. Fortunately, by looking at the army list so far, the Bretonnian one looks quite small. No Grail Reliquae. The Grail Monk's actually part of the Men at Arms. You've got a new character in there, which is the Sergeant at Arms, and you've now got the Knights of the Realm on foot. But overall, it's not the biggest army roster out there when you look at some of the other ones. So should be fairly easy to make most of the options in there worth taking. We've certainly seen those Men at Arm rules make them quite interesting. So there's no Old World Almanac next Monday. It's Christmas Day after all, so there will be no Almanac then. But check in on the 26th for something of an off-white Christmas. Off-white, do they mean bone? Bone is an off-white colour. Are we going to get some... Tomb King stuff maybe? I don't know, let's see. But off-white suggests to me bone. Right, Star, yes, those including those factions getting a PDF list. Where was the Star? Was that up here? Yes, every faction. So every faction, including those PDF armies, Skaven, Vampire Counts, Lizardmen, all the ones that people are desperately unhappy that they're not included, will also get a army list, grand army composition like this. What they probably won't get, doesn't explicitly say it, but it infers it, that they will not get the essentially the Armies of Infamy lists. It will only be the basic one that you see here. Okay, so again, another very clear article there from Warhammer Community. It's broken everything down pretty easily. It's clear to understand. There's not massive changes in terms of the base way that you build an army compared to 8th edition. You're still with 2,000 points. You're still having the 50% characters, 25% core, 50% special, and 25% rare. There's a little bit more of the restriction, however, around how many of a unit you can take. I actually don't mind that. Some people feel that it's a bit restrictive. I think that will be overcome with some of these Armies of Infamy. I don't mind there being restricted field trebuchet or duke or must take Knights of the Realm. I still think there's plenty of flexibility to build it how you want. Mercenaries and allies, we'll see. But overall, pretty good article. Again, as always, we're reading it, taking it in isolation, looking at what's written on the page. We're not assuming anything. And these rules, we'll see how they play out when we have the book in our hands. And there's leaks all over the place, but I'm not covering leaks. It's not something I focus on. I focus on the actual information that we have and assessing and analysing that information that we have from official channels. But there's lots of leaks out there. So hopefully we're not going to have to wait too long into the new year before we're actually going to have our hands on an army book that has the full list of rules in it. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more content, please hit that subscribe button. It's free for you to do. It means a huge amount for me. So thank you for that in advance. And we've just finished our look at the timelines of the different factions around Warhammer The Old World. We'll now be going back to our faction focuses to try and finish off the ones that are outstanding. Next up will be the Lizardmen, so that one will start tomorrow, and then after that we'll be going into the Warriors of Chaos and the Orcs and Goblins, with the Wood Elves bringing up the rear, and that will bring me to the end of all the army books that I own that I can physically comment on as part of the faction focus. For some reason my Skaven book appears to be in the warp somewhere, and therefore I cannot do a faction focus of the Skaven, which is a shame because I really like the faction. There you go. Thank you very much for watching. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you all very soon.